Once upon a time there was a man who struggled valiantly with his ventures to get his companies off the ground, and whom many called a genius. Through his teachings everyone was able to learn some of his strategies, which led him to become one of the most outstanding men of his time, and who is still remembered by millions today. Before we continue, we invite you to join us until the end of the video and to subscribe to the channel. The story goes that this man's name was Steve Jobs. Jobs, with his cunning and ability to manipulate people, he created two of the most valuable and creative companies of modern times, Apple and Pixar. While these achievements were not easy, he had to be astute to play his own cards to achieve success. However, Jobs had a unique ability to create his own reality. He used a distortion field to persuade others that his ideas were truly unique. With this tactic, Jobs propelled his companies forward. In addition, he used a combination of manipulative strategies to ensure his victories at board meetings with some of the most powerful executives in the world. The story goes that in his journey and experience as an entrepreneur, Jobs learned valuable lessons that he has left as a legacy to all those who want to follow his example. The advice Stephen Jobs left behind was as follows. Tip number 1, sell your idea with passion and excitement. One day, Steve decided to launch a new venture, a music service called iTunes. To achieve it, he met with important musicians to convince them to join his plan. One of them was the famous trumpeter Wynton Marsalis, who was impressed by the excitement with which Steve spoke about his project. It was as if he was under the influence of a spirit because he kept talking with enthusiasm, said Marsalis. Steve also applied this technique when creating commercials for his company, making sure that each one was charged with a good dose of emotion. With his ability to speak with passion, Steve was able to lead his company, Apple, to become something much bigger than just a computer company. So, if you want to sell your ideas, speak with passion and emotion, and people will be willing to listen and join your cause. The story goes that Steve, the great leader, suffered a major setback when he was ousted from his own company Apple in 1985. Although Jobs co-founded the company and helped build its early success, there were disagreements with the rest of the company's executives over the direction of the company. As a result, Jobs was fired from his role as CEO. However, he returned to the company in 1997. Tip number 2, relentless sincerity will help you gain a dedicated following. Stephen returned to Apple with a plan to revive it. The company was going through serious financial difficulties and Steve knew he had to be sincere and honest in order to fix the problems. So, in relaxed, sporty attire, Steve went up to the auditorium and called on Apple's top employees to confess what was wrong with the company. At first, no one wanted to talk, but Steve encouraged them to be honest. Finally, someone said that the products were not as attractive as they used to be. Steve finally stepped in and said, "The products suck." People were surprised by his sincerity and honesty. But Steve knew that only then could he fix the problems and bring Apple back to the top. The lesson here is that being honest and transparent, while difficult, is the best way to earn the respect and trust of others. Tip number 3. Work smart and others will respect you. The story goes that Steve understood that respect is earned by working hard and working smart. Steve knew that to achieve his goals he had to work hard and work with dedication. When he returned to his Apple company in 1997, Steve was committed to working tirelessly from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 14 hours a day, every day. In addition, he was still leading Pixar's operations, which meant that his work was never done. Yet Steve didn't complain. On the contrary, he worked with an incredible work ethic, pushing himself to the limit to achieve his goals. This is how Steve earned the respect and admiration of others, becoming a great leader. Tip number 4. Win people over with praise and compliments. The story goes that Steve believed that the key to getting what he wanted was to seduce and compliment everyone around him. Steve knew that people are always looking for approval and recognition, so they responded positively to the affection and compliments he provided. Steve went out of his way to seduce and charm everyone with his ability to flatter, and best of all, he enjoyed doing it. Sometimes he would even give false flattery to those who were in need of it in order to get what he wanted. While Steve could be adoring to people he hated, he could just as skillfully be discrediting to people he liked. Tip number 5. Disapprove the ideas of others. Steve believed that to achieve success you had to take the good ideas of others and present them as your own. Steve was very adept at manipulating memories of the past and convincing his people that he was always right. One day one of his employees named Matthew came up with an idea to improve the brand. Although Steve initially rejected Matthew's idea, he soon after presented it to the company as his own. His subdito says that Steve could easily throw out your idea and the next day present it as his own. Jobs played all the cards to move his company forward, and from time to time, he was a good listener in the hallways to gather ideas that would help the company. Tip number 6. Act with agility in decision-making. Unlike other entrepreneurs, he did not take too much time to make important decisions, but relied on his instincts and his ability to change things quickly if necessary. While company protocol might take a week to make decisions, he did it in less than an hour. Despite the mistakes along the way, Steve moved forward with determination. Tip number 7. Don't wait to fix problems, fix them now. When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple, he worked on the creation of a movie called Toy Story. Jobs dedicated himself to bringing each of the characters to life, but one day, something strange happened. The main character named Woody, a spunky and funny cowboy, became an obnoxious and unsympathetic character thanks to script edits from a big company called Disney. Jobs couldn't let such a big company ruin his original story, so he decided to act quickly. If something isn't right, you can't just ignore it and say they'll fix it later. That's what the other companies do. We only have one chance to get it right, Jobs said with determination. With these words, Jobs insisted that Disney return the rights to the story to Pixar. And so thanks to Jobs' determination and courage, Woody returned to being the fun and endearing character he once was. The feature film, Toy Story, became a huge success. The moral of this lesson is that if we want to solve a problem, we must act quickly and not wait for things to fix themselves. There are two ways to deal with problem people: to toe their line or ignore them. Steve ruled with a firm hand. He was known to be ruthless with those who dared to challenge him or fail to meet his expectations. In his struggle to build the best possible computer, Steve encountered a major challenge: building a mouse that could move easily in all directions. One of his engineers told him it was impossible to build it commercially, but Steve didn't give up. Instead, he fired the engineer and looked for someone else who could build it, and he did. History teaches that sometimes, you have to be stubborn about your goals, and remove mental barriers to get what you want. Tip number 9. Strike hard when you have the chance. Steve was a very ambitious man. When his big bet on Pixar paid off with the success of the movie, Toy Story, Steve decided to take the company public, despite warnings from his advisors. However, Steve had a strategy. He knew that by taking the company public, he would have the money he needed to become independent from Disney and have control over his own films. And so it was, Pixar became a smash hit on the stock market, and Disney was forced to buy the company for $7,400 million. From then on, Steve was known as the king of business, for his ability to make bold and wise decisions at the right time. Tip number 10. When you have an advantage, use it. Steve returned to Apple when the company was in financial crisis. King Steve knew that his people were losing their magic and confidence in the company, so he decided to take drastic measures to save the company. On his first day back, Steve called a meeting of the leaders and demanded that they reevaluate their stock options and reduce the price, in order to revalue them. Despite the objections of the board members, Steve stood his ground and threatened to leave Apple if he did not receive the necessary support. But Steve didn't stop there. He also demanded that all but one board member resign, and that's how Steve gained complete control over the company. Through his leadership and quick decision-making, Jobs was able to save the company from bankruptcy and restore its magic and confidence to the entire staff. Tip number 11. Always strive for perfection and never settle for less. Steve was never a conformist visionary, nor did he bargain for perfection. He demanded that whatever was done, it be of the highest quality, and he would accept nothing less. When his computer started up too slowly, he would call the machine manager and coerce him that the situation was life or death, and had to be fixed in half the stipulated time. Steve wanted all decisions to be made quickly and would accept no excuses for not doing so. His company became one of the most prosperous and recognized in the world, but it was also known to be a place where only the most dedicated could prosper. While some saw him as a tyrant, others admired him for his dedication to excellence and his ability to make his product the best of the best. In conclusion, Steve Jobs, the king of technology, was a visionary and passionate leader who helped revolutionize the technology industry. With his focus on perfection and his ability to make quick and bold decisions, Jobs led Apple to become one of the most successful and admired companies of all time. Through his seduction and flattery, Jobs managed to disarm people and win their approval. With his ability to take advantage of opportunities and demand perfection, he helped build a unique company culture. His legacy lives on in the world of technology and business thinking.